Good morning. Be with you on this Monday morning. Sorry, we had a few days off last week. We had a few little things happen here where I wasn't able to get back to record Rooted, but hopefully we'll be normal schedule this week. It's my intention, hopefully. So today we're going to pick up with Ruth chapter 4. We're going to see the redemption of the property and of all these type things. Let's read Ruth 4, 1 through 12. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here." And they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, "Naomi has come back from Moab and is selling a piece of land belonging to our relative Abimelech. Abimelech. Elimelech. And I keep stumbling over it. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here, the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know, for no one has the right to do it except you. And I'm next in line. I'll redeem it, he said. Then Boaz says, on the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. At this point, the guardian redeemer said, then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This is a method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, buy it yourself. He removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, today you are witnesses, I have bought from Naomi all the property of Abimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. I've also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among the family or from his hometown. Today you're my witnesses. The elders and all the people of the gate said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. So we see here, it's interesting to see how this is a really interesting and cool snapshot of how they didn't have, they didn't have realtors back then. There was no Zillow. There was no no way. Buying property and houses was a little bit different back in those days, wasn't it? Especially the exchange of a shoe or a sandal, rather. That's one way to finalize this. I guess that I think after buying, if you bought a house, there's nothing worse than signing your name umpteen dozen times in every form created in mankind's name. So I think I'd much rather give the realtor my shoe or my sandal than would have to notarize and sign all those forms when you buy a house. So what's really interesting, reading a few commentaries, getting ready to reflect on this. What was very interesting was so it says here, verse 1 says when he's talking to the one that who's closer in line. I'm reading from the NIV. The NIV translated, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." Um, uh, the actual Hebrew is an idiom in Hebrew, and it can actually be translated, "Come over here, what's your name?" Like it's very interesting the way the story is recalled. We don't see the name of the person with the first right of refusal, do we? They never mention his name. Even it starts off by saying, "Hey, come here, so and so." It's literally how this could be translated. It's at NIV is being nice and says, "Come here, my friend." That's a fair translation, but "come here, what's your name?" That's an equally fair translation. Um, and then throughout the story, he's called the guardian redeemer, called the kinsman. He's called by the title or the status he has, but he's not called by his name. Nowhere do we see his name mentioned, which is interesting because we see Boaz recorded. And we see Boaz remembered throughout all time. And the reason why, what's his name, didn't want to redeem the property is it says, verse 6 says, I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. What's interesting is if you read, once you get in commentaries and different things like that, there's no clear explanation as to why this would endanger his estate. There's really no, it doesn't, there's no obvious reason why this would endanger his estate. We don't know. It's what he says. Take it for what it says, but we don't know. Well, for whatever reason, he had the chance to redeem, and he was more worried about the inheritance, the name. We don't know, but he had the chance to do the right thing, chose not to. And of course, we know this is God's sovereign hand at work here, guiding these things. So none of this was for question. But there's and I'm not saying we did was sinful because it wasn't, but I think sometimes how it's we focus a lot on in our faithfulness and trying to be holy. We so often focus on when we do the sins of what's called commission, when we do the things that we should not do. There's a concept called sins of omission. Sins of omission are when we do not do the things that we should do. So once again, I'm not saying, oh, what's his name here? Sinned. Not saying that. Although it does seem he was more interested in self-preservation than he was in helping. It seems though he was much more worried about his name and preserving his stuff and his status and his, all that. It seems that was his primary motivating factor. So probably, you shouldn't be, we shouldn't be worried about self-preservation above all else. But because of that, he missed this chance. This chance. Of course, the Lord knew it was Boaz who needed to do this. Because we're going to see how this all works out in just a few minutes, a few days rather, about how God's at work in this. But I just think about how it is. We think so often about what we should avoid. Do we think about the times in our life when God calls us to do something and we don't do it? When we don't love the folks we're supposed to love, or when we look past people and don't care and don't give and don't serve and we aren't faithful like we ought to be. Because in some ways, the sins of commission, the sins that we commit and do, we put so much focus on those. Those are easy to identify. Those are, oh, I should have done that. I was tempted here. I should have done that. We can usually name those sins pretty easily and keep a record on those. But I like what our prayer of confession says before communion. We have not loved you with our whole heart. We have failed to be an obedient church. We've not done your will. We've not heard the cry of the needy. Forgive us. We've not done these things. We've not. So in our quest to be holy, in our quest to be faithful, yeah, let's focus on avoiding sinful actions. Totally. Let's focus what we on avoiding things that we should not be doing. But friends, let's also focus on the things that we aren't doing that God has called us to. Where has God called us to be obedient? Where's God called us to be faithful? Where's God called us to do something that we didn't? Today, he didn't do something. And we don't even know his name now. Oh, what's his name? Let's um let's avoid evil, but let's also do good. right, thanks for being with us. Tomorrow I'll wrap up with Ruth. So hope you have a great rest of your Monday. See you in the morning.